Welcome back to the show. Appreciate everyone for coming out and watching. So today, this is the post review of the Nebraska-Wisconsin game. So 24-17 loss for Nebraska. First quarter was amazing. They put 14 points on the board. They were able to move the ball at will. Defense held Wisconsin to 0. And then second and third quarter, Wisconsin scored 10 points in the second quarter. 7 points in the third quarter, and then obviously overtime. Nebraska couldn't score again until the final seconds of the fourth quarter to send it into overtime. So, I mean, those kinds of things. It was a tough fought battle. I went into the game thinking that Nebraska would probably lose, just for the simple fact that we didn't know who was going to start at quarterback, and we also haven't seen consistency from the offense. There's moments where they play really well. They're moving the ball downfield. They're not committing penalties. And then, they just turn around and don't score for almost 3 quarters, really. So it's kind of interesting seeing Chuba Purdy come out, and he got the start. So 116 yards. He went 15 of 24. Had a touchdown, interception. Well, obviously the interception was in overtime, but they did good. They didn't turn the ball over, obviously, until overtime. So I think that he played within the system really well. I'm actually really glad that he played well. I think that before this game, I wasn't sure if Nebraska had a starting quarterback on the roster. I mean, after Jeff Sims, who fumbles and throws interceptions every game. It was the same with Heinrich Haarberg. Kind of a turnover machine. Not as many as Jeff Sims. Went out there and won games. I mean, he won all Nebraska games as the starting quarterback. But also that defense has bailed them out time and time again, and they do enough to hold them, and then the offense just kind of doesn't really do anything. So Nebraska rushed for 195 yards. Purdy had 105 of those yards. Next you had Emmett Johnson for 50 yards, Grant for 45, and then Lloyd for -5. Overall, they rushed pretty well. I know that some of the plays that Purdy got some good first downs on, got some good chunk of yardage on the ground, weren't exactly designed, but he played smart. And I also saw him throw the ball away a few times, which I was glad to see. Instead of trying to force a throw into a tight window that he knew he couldn't make it, or just didn't have anything open, trying to make something happen, he threw the ball. He lived to play another down. Receiving, not exactly the greatest. Obviously the lone touchdown from Lloyd, 1 reception for 58 yards. Out of 169 receiving yards, you had Lloyd, who had 58 of those yards with the touchdown. It was a great touchdown. It was a great throw. I mean, he got the ball, he snagged the ball out the air, took a hit, stayed on his feet, and ran in for a touchdown. I think that was super great to see. It's another one of those receivers that's, it's a true freshman going out there and starting and making something happen. Next, you have Billy Kemp, 8 receptions, 43 yards. Made some really crucial catches. Didn't have a huge game. He really hasn't had a huge year. But when he's out there, he does make clutch catches. Really tries to get to the first down marker and more. I know Marcus Satterfield had said that they try to design some of these plays specifically to get to Kemp, so he's prolific in open field. He can make people miss. It just doesn't seem that that's happened a whole lot. Not a whole lot of I haven't seen a lot of them really work. I know they do a lot of those screens. A couple of them really got blown up. Wisconsin played tough. They played smart. They stayed on their assignment. So Coleman had 2 receptions for 32 yards. Fedoni 3 receptions for 23, and then Bullock 1 reception for 13. Overall, it really wasn't bad. I think they did enough to win the game. I think they could have done a little bit more. I think that they played well. Sometimes you win some, sometimes you lose some, and I think just after that first drive, which most of the yards were out of that first quarter. So I think after the first quarter, they had 100 yards of total offense, a little bit more than that. And that's just kind of where it goes. I mean, Wisconsin, they adjusted. So for whatever reason, the past few seasons, probably the past 6 seasons, you see a lot of Nebraska teams just not be able to make that adjustment. I don't know if it's just the coaches aren't willing to change the scheme or change things up or try to do something different, or if they feel like if they keep trying to run some of these pass plays, that's going to work, or if they keep trying to play zone, it's going to work, and keep the defense in front of, or keep the offense in front of them. I'm not really sure. I just feel like our second half adjustments just aren't that great. It's kind of tough to watch. So we really can't ever put blame on the refs for winning a game. I think that as a team, you need to do enough to win the game. One of the things I have noticed in the past, probably since Nebraska's been in this Big Ten, and I've really started focusing in and paying attention to a lot of these penalties and stuff like that, is there's not very many times Nebraska actually gets a holding call called, especially when they're playing defense. I just kind of feel like there were numerous plays where an offensive lineman had a Nebraska defender on the outside of the shoulder pads. And I know holding happens on every play, and I know there's also a lot of calls that just get missed on both sides of the field. But at the same time, there's just too many, I feel like, for Nebraska that are just blatantly obvious that they're just not calling. So you can see on some of the replays, I mean, Riley Van Poppel was getting held on the outside of his shoulder pads, and nothing was called. On that almost interception from the guy was guarding Coleman, he pushed off. It was a blatant push off. I mean, the ball was thrown in the vicinity. It was a catchable ball, technically. But I watched that DB push off on him, and nothing was called. In overtime, you know, Braylon Allen got blown up by Luke Reimer or Nick Heinrich. I can't remember who it was, but got blown up, fell flat on his back, and stuck his leg straight in there and tripped him. And Tanner Mordecai, you know, did what he did. I don't understand how they are missing a lot of these calls. I don't know if it's when you're watching the game and you're upset, you're frustrated, you're angry a little bit, you're a little bit pissed off about it. You know, me, I kind of go to they must have it out for Nebraska. At the end of the day, they really don't. But it's frustrating to watch some of these calls, and it goes for both sides, not even just Nebraska, but I do feel like a lot of calls get missed when Nebraska's playing. It doesn't make any sense. You know, you have a sideline judge who saw that and they called it an incomplete pass, but I mean, I guess you just missed the entire arm pushing off on the shoulder of Coleman. Like, that's technically pass interference. If that would have been the opposite way, they would have called it in a heartbeat. So, fourth down plays. Fourth down has been kind of a bane. It's kind of tough to watch. I don't understand their play calling sometimes when they're in a 4th and 1 or 4th and 2 kind of situation. They run a lot of stuff out of shotgun, and I don't understand it. I know everyone calls it like the tush push. I know a lot of teams do it. Maybe that's something that they feel like a lot of teams are keying in on, but when you're out of the shotgun or you're in a pistol formation, you're running, like it happens more often than not that the defense comes through the gap and gets a tackle for loss. Nebraska has not done well at all on 4th and short. And I don't understand why they don't just line up in the I formation, bring them big boys in, run that jumbo offense, and just try to get that push and do a quarterback sneak or a fullback trap. Going into the 4th quarter, that last drive, I do feel like they mismanaged the time. I feel like that was a huge disadvantage. I think you have 3 timeouts and you have less than a minute. Call those timeouts. Get your offense together, dial up a play, you know, let them go ball out. It's not necessarily just, oh, go for the win, or I think anytime, in my opinion, you have a chance to get points, I think you should take those points. I know that you're going to play, I know Rule said they're going to play all out and they're going to, you know, try to get that touchdown or whatever, and I think sometimes it's just hit or miss, and I think that was just poor management. You had plenty of time. You call your timeouts. You're not going to need them, you know, with only a couple seconds left, realistically. And I just feel like they could have used the timeout to take that time, dial something up, get the offense on the same page, and let them run. Let them do their thing. Chubba Purdy was accurate pretty much the whole game. Like, he did miss throws. Like, I know he missed some throws, but at the same time, and a lot of those clutch moments, like, he was hitting some good ones. Like, he overthrew Lloyd and Coleman a couple times. There were a few errant throws, but I mean, I honestly feel like I trust him in those situations. Like, after watching that whole game, I feel like I trust him to make those throws. Alrighty, so thanks for coming out and watching. I appreciate it. As always, take care. See y'all on the next one.